Hey data people. In this video we're going to talk about Charticulator and some tips to make it easier to use or raise awareness of things you can do with it. Charticulator.com has been out there for a while, and it's a great tool to help you build no-code custom visuals. But once they added the custom visual that you could use straight in Power BI Desktop, it makes it even more accessible. And I find myself using it more and more. It just gives you so much flexibility. Charticulator's definitely got a learning curve, but once you sort of get used to the building in that environment, it's my go-to for a lot of things now, and it actually lets you have some capabilities that you don't have with the native visuals. So you should probably still try stuff with the native visuals first, but if you can't get what you need from those, definitely Charticulator's a great option. So I'm going to share some tips with you today. This really isn't an intro video, but it's some tips and that kind of assume you've already started, but maybe haven't gotten very far yet. But you're at least aware of, marks and glyphs and plot segments and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to raise awareness of some things that might help you get further faster. If you're not already subscribed to the Hoosier BI YouTube channel, please do so down below, and also follow me on Twitter. All right, so I've got 10 tips to share. Hopefully you don't know all of them, and hopefully there's a few that can help you better leverage this tool. So the first one is the Yaxis Legend. And I'm just going to make a quick chart here. And I like to usually start with a table of the data, and I'll just duplicate that. And then I just like to turn that table into a Charticulator visual. So I've already downloaded the custom visual here, and I'm just going to go ahead into edit mode, and I'll just create a chart instead of importing a template. And first thing I'm going to do is just grab a mark, put it into the glyph. Charticulator often tries to be helpful, and it'll often put things in the links field. I just drag that up to here so that it's available for me to use. I'm going to put this as the height of my bar. And I'll go ahead and I'll just drag it's already sort of done this for me since I just have these 10 rows of data here. But I'll just go at just so I can get the labels there. And a lot of people think that, at this point you need to like add a data axis or something here to get the legend to show up. But that's actually not the case. And so what I wanted to show you was if you just go to the shape itself where you've set the height, and you just go to here and hit add legend, you'll get your values there. So a real quick and easy way to add a legend to your charts. Okay, so that's tip number one. Tip number two is the ability to filter inside the visual. Now this is something you probably won't need very often unless you're doing two or more plot segments inside the same visual, which is a tip we'll cover later, because otherwise you might just send only the rows you need to the visual and handle that with visual level filters or the measure that you write. But in this case, I've got 100 rows of data, and this data set is real simple for all of these. I should have shown this already, but it's basically 10 product groups, letters A through J, I think. Each of them has 10 products. There's an index column, and then there's a random number generator to get the value, which I'm treating as a quantity. And so in this case, let's say I'm actually putting two charts in one, and I've got all 100 rows here, but I've also added this measure here called is top 10. And so I'm actually just going to filter this to the top 10, and just to show you what that measure is. This isn't a DAX video, but I'll just hover over here to show you the formula. It's just a rank X, and it just checks if the rank is less than or equal to 10, return a 1, otherwise return a 0. And so that's this column here, and I've sorted by this so you just see the top 10 rows. But I've got 100 rows in the visual, and that looks very cluttered. So I'm going to go into edit mode here, and this is something you do on I can minimize the glyph that's already built, and it's actually something on the plot segment. So you highlight the plot segment, and then you can go to filter by, And there's actually two ways you could do this. The first I'll just show you is an expression. Since is top 10 is a numerical field, it's a 1 or a 0, I can just put here is top 10 equals, and I need two equals there to get this to work, is equal to 1. And you see right away I get my filter of top 10. I could have also done, greater than or equal to 1, and that would also work. The other way to do it, if I change this to a category filter, you see that only my category columns show up here. So in this case, since it's just a 1 or a 0, I'm not doing other math with it, I could actually change this to categorical. And then if I go here and filter by category, you'll see that it shows up. And then I could just choose I only want to keep the ones. Okay, so there's two ways to do filtering in our Charticulator visual when you have more rows than you want for a particular subvisual within that. Okay, so that's tip number 2. Number 3 is group by, which is very similar. And I'll just go into the visual and show you. It's right next to filter by that we were just looking at. And again, in this case, I've got the 100 rows. And this technique actually allows you to do some basic aggregation inside the visual itself. So certainly this is easily handled with a measure, but again, it's just good to know that you have options here to do that. And again, this is probably something you do. Say I needed the 100 rows for some other visual, and then inside the same visual, I also wanted to show this grouped by the product group. I could do that here. I'm doing a demo just with a single visual just to show you how it's done. Again, I can minimize the glyph. I do the plot segment, and then in this case, you just hit group by. And in this case, I've already I've selected product group here. If I group by nothing, you see how cluttered it looks here. But if I just click on product group, I've grouped by that. And then over here in my shape, which is set to the sum here, you can change the aggregation if you wanted to. Sum was what I wanted, so I chose sum here to do the aggregation. So it's adding up all of the value column for whatever category you've grouped by. Okay. All right, so let's move on to tip number 4. One of my favorite things about Charticulator is the ability to use results of measures in places you can't with the native visuals, and that's like on your axis or as a legend, for example. Charticulator uses everything sort of equivalently. Once you pass the data in Charticulator, every column or every measure becomes a column, and it's fair game to be used. So in this case, I've written this measure here called the product level, and I'll hover over that. And again, it's just a simple switch true expression that checks for the value, and if it's less than or equal to 33, it calls it low, medium, or high. And so I've got this low, medium, high column here, and I've actually been able to use this here. And I'm not sure I even need to go into the visual, but I will. And basically, you just can assign, on the plot segment, you can just use the measure column as your X category. So it's a real convenient way to make visuals that you can't make with the native visuals. You try to drag a measure into a axis field well or a legend one, it's not going to work. Okay. The other thing too is if you do custom sorting here, low, medium, high, this is not alphabetical, so you can actually just drag these around like this as well, and come up with your own custom sorting there. You have to hit OK for it to apply, but just another tip there to get the sort order that you want. Okay. All right, so that's tip number 4. Another thing that a lot of people don't know is while inside the visuals there's a color picker, you can choose the colors of all your things. You can also use a measure to provide whatever colors you want. Say you have a theme that you want to stick to. So in this case, I have this measure here called bar color, And again, it's another switch true. And I just, said, if the product group that I'm in is either A, B, and C, red, green, whatever. And I wrote this just to show you can provide the basic colors as, red or green, blue, etc., or you can provide hex codes as follows. And so I'm just doing a demo there to show you what this looks like. And then all you do inside the visual, again, is just on the shape. You're just putting that bar color measures directly into the fill of that shape, and then you can assign your colors there. All right, a lot of people don't know that one. All right, another great thing about Charticulator is all the elements that you use in your visuals have a visible toggle there that you can make conditional on a number of things. And there's actually two ways to do it. So in this case, I said, hey, I only want to put labels on the top 3 products in each product group. And so I wrote this measure just to check if it's, if the rank is less than or equal to 3, make it a 1, if not a 0, right? So real basic stuff here. But then inside the visual, there's 2 ways to actually conditionally hide things. And so if we just go to, I'll hide the glyph, and I'll go to the text box, which is what I added to the glyph to show that, that just has the product name. But then down here, there's 2 ways to do it. One is you can use condition by, and then I could go, is top product, and then I could go here to a formula, and I could put, since I returned 0, 1, I said it's greater than or equal to 1 or less than or equal to 2. So that excludes the zeros. But you can also do it by providing an opacity value. And so the measure that I have shows a 1, completely opaque if I want it to be seen, and a 0 would be it isn't. So I was able to use that measure in either place here to do it. So just showing you have 2 options to conditionally hide stuff. And just about every chart element you might do has this visibility option to show or hide stuff. All right, another kind of fun one is this dynamic text size. And again, so many properties can be set dynamically, so it's also possible, and this one kind of looks like a eye chart here, getting smaller as it goes down, but you can use a measure like this, and this one certainly takes some trial and error to get the sizing just right. But this one basically, goes out and checks for, what's the quantity of, this in this context, and then go out and get the biggest value, and then come up with a ratio of those, and then multiply that by some. I have that max text size variable, and that's what you would just change to get it to ratio there. And then I just return the scale times the ratio of the 2 times the max text size. So again, you can play with this to get it how you want, but this can be really handy when you can also count the number of characters in a text label, for example, and conditionally make it smaller if so. So that's another just thing to be aware of, is that you can dynamically adjust things like text size. All right. Another good tip is to do multi-column sorting. And basically, if you're just sorting by one thing, a lot of this just natively works out. But if you ever do things that are that depend on multiple columns, you can just write a measure like I've done here with this multi-sort, where I've got my sorting that I give on the axis like we covered a little bit ago, and then we've got it sorted by product group. But then in this case, I wanted it to go from low to high of these values, and that isn't how it would go natively. But I could force it that way. So I wrote this measure called multi-sort, and basically the tip that I'm sharing here is you can write measures that sort of harvest the values of 2, 3, 4 columns, and with some text formatting. Maybe you have to pad the text to get it to sort in the correct order, like I've done here with the format, where I have in quotes the 3 zeros, so that it forces that value to always have 3 characters and zeros in front so that those go in the right order. And to get the reverse order, my max value here is 100, so I actually put 100 minus the value there to get it to go in the other way. And again, you can get clever here with your expression, but the concept I wanted to show was just, make a measure that harvest the values from 2, 3, 4 columns and use that then as the sorting in the visual to get your desired result. And again, you can just add that multi-sort measure into here, or you could put it in your tooltip. Either way, it would be available in the visual. Charticulator will use the sorting that you provide to it to the visual unless it's otherwise specified, hard-coded in the visual there. So that's another useful tip that I use frequently. All right, another one is, and this is a good one here to do sometimes that jumps to the wrong place, but this is just one visual, but it's actually got sort of 3 visuals in there. It's got this bar chart, it's got this donut chart, and then it's sort of got a card in the middle here. And again, the charts themselves don't matter. The key point is that you can put multiple visuals inside here, and it's still just one DAX query behind here that's generating this table behind the scenes, and then Charticulator's doing the rest. So this can actually be a performant way to get multiple visuals onto your report page without paying the cost of multiple visual level queries. And just to show you the gist of this one, I'm going to hide this visual and show another partial one. And I'm going to jump into edit mode here. And I just want to make sure you're aware of the key thing. So I've got my visual here. Another tip is to maximize your real estate by moving these guides out close to the edge of the page if you have the space. And what we can do here is I can highlight this plot segment, which comes natively. I'm going to drag it over to this middle guide here. And then what I can do is add another plot segment here. And the key thing to remember when adding a new plot segment has to have a glyph. So the best way to do that is to make your glyph first, to create an extra tab here, and then you go to plot segments, and then I'll just draw our second plot segment here, make sure it snaps to all the corners, to all the guides, so they have these green circles here, which says it's bound itself to those guides and therefore will size correctly when you go back to your report page. And then from here on out, it's just like building another visual. And so that's the key part. And then, you can also do things like I had that card there as well. You can also add things, directly to the chart itself. So if I needed to just put a value here, I could, and then I could bind, some aggregate measure. Maybe I would put like a calculate with an all to get the total quantity, and that value would then show on every row. But then I could just grab and use the average of that value, let Charticulator get the average for you, and then use that in the text box, for example. Okay, so that's that one. And then the last tip I wanted to share was scrolling. Again, Charticulator is great, and you can make visuals pretty quickly that look nice. Not that these that you've seen today are example. This is all about functionality, not how it looks. But if you've made Charticulator visuals, you've probably run into the following where, hey, this looks great when I have 10 rows of data, but if I remove this filter on the product group, the chart size stays the same, but now I've got 100 rows of data in that space, and that doesn't look very nice at all. So currently, Charticulator doesn't have the ability to scroll, and I wanted to show you a tip that you could do to get around this. So say I had a visual where I needed to show all 100 rows, but I needed more real estate to be able to get them at the proper spacing so it was more readable. So again, I'll hide this one, and I'll show this one. And you can see this one looks good. And so in this case, although the Charticulator visual doesn't have scrolling, the Power BI page can. And so you can see here, I'm actually just using the page scrolling feature and not the visual. So in this case, I've made the length of my chart very high in Charticulator. And if I, click over here somewhere, you can see that I've also made the page size very big, up to 5,000 here in this case, to do that. And the key thing, and then inside Charticulator, let me just show you that one as well, where that property is. And again, this takes some trial and error. But if you look here, the chart size here, and there are limits on these, but it's at least 4,000. And so I put 4,000 here as the height. And then, of course, the page is very big. And then the other key step here to be able to get scrolling on your page is up here on the View tab. And let me expand this out so I get the view I'm used to. And here, if you go to the page view, this is what it typically looks like. So you would set your chart size to this and you'd be like, oh, that's not good, that won't work. But if you just change the page view to fit to width, then it forces it to the width, and then it gives you the scroll bar. Okay, so that's a 10th tip that hopefully, again, until the Charticulator visual supports scrolling, can help you there. Now, the bad thing with this approach is if you do want to give that functionality like this, you can see, well, that doesn't look very good. And so in a future video, I'm also going to show you how to dynamically handle that so that regardless of how many rows are there, it's always going to have these same dimensions. So if you only filtered it, this has 100 values here. If you only had 10, it would look the same, but it would just show you these top 10 and then the rest would be blank. So that's another video I'm going to do to show you how to dynamically handle both those scenarios. But for now, if you have one visual that has lots of rows, if you need it to look good, you can leverage the page scrolling feature like I've shown. Okay? All right, so that's the 10th tip. Again, a reminder to, if you're getting good stuff from these videos, please subscribe. And otherwise, thank you.